Hi, I'm Victoria Ray Henderson, the host of Listen Up Homebuyers. It is a real pleasure to introduce Steve Kodad, a certified Feng Shui professional. He is the owner of the Feng Shui Cure, author of 3 books on the subject of Feng Shui. Steve, welcome to Listen Up Homebuyers.
Good morning, Vic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great today, and I'm so glad that you could join us today. People have lots of questions about Feng Shui. I thought we could start with you just saying, what is Feng Shui?
Well, the way I actually present it to my students is that it's a very ancient environmental science. And a lot of people find that a little bit more easy to accept. It's something that to me was a philosophy to make sure that everybody felt as comfortable as possible. It was created thousands of years ago, depending on what book you pick up, maybe 4,000 or more years. And as you can imagine back then, a lot of folks were not as comfortable in their surroundings at that point for a lot of reasons, other human beings being one of them. And so, one of the situations that was brought up to me when I was first learning was way they would actually place their homes in a very secure kind of environment. And it's called the classic armchair. So it is used not only for how you set a house, but also for how you place your furniture. But to give you a real quick idea about what the classic armchair was, they wanted to make sure that their house or their temple was maybe a half or a third of the way up a mountain, where they had their backs supported.
Hmm.
And at the same time, they were looking for an environment that had to the left and to the right also possibly some smaller hills or a forest, sort of where the armrests are, basically to protect those sides. And then at the same time, they were also being able to see for a long distance.
Mhm.
This way, it gave them a lot of reaction time. So if they had to hide or they had to collect their weapons or run away, they had time to react. And this same situation is now very prevalent in the way we're wired right now. When you and I walk into a restaurant and they give us our choice where we're going to sit, we don't usually choose the center of the restaurant. We usually choose the outside, the booths. So
Mhm.
we have our back protected and we can see who is maybe entering into the environment. So it's really, in a lot of ways, sort of a domino effect. Those times, they wanted to make sure that a person could be as comfortable and as secure as possible, and therefore they had a better chance to succeed in life.
Boy, I love the analogy you just made about the restaurant because that is just everyone. I've been in restaurants where I look over and someone says, "I don't want to sit in the middle of the room," you know,
Right,
and it's almost like it's an innate part of who we are. Um,
right.
can you tell me where did feng shui originate?
Well, that's not as easy of a question. Most people would say China,
Mhm.
and certainly it was one of the leaders. But, the funny thing is that there are a lot of other countries that actually have something that is very similar with different names. For example, in India, it's called Washnu, and in Korea, it's called Punsgu. And so I tell a lot of real estate agents when they're working with people from other countries, they'd be surprised that they don't even know what the words feng shui mean. I had an agent in my company that I ran for a number of years who was Korean. His name was Chong Choi, a fantastic guy. And I remember going up to Chong after being involved with feng shui for a couple of years and saying, Chong, do you know what feng shui is? Do you use it in your country? He said, had no idea what I was talking about. But then when I came up with the correct word,
Uh,
he knew what I was talking about. But there's a lot of different uh, countries that use it, a lot of different nationalities. It
mhm.
is certainly big in the United States. It became really bigger, you might say, in 1985, but it became bigger because of it becoming a little more westernized in certain
Mhm.
situations. And as you already know, there are a lot of different schools of feng shui.
Mhm.
And so that is really the way it got started, and
Mhm.
it got started primarily in China, but other countries too.
Yeah, when you mentioned the other countries, I think it made me think of hygge from Sweden, or from
Right,
Norway, I should say, not Sweden, but and that is, Hygge. That is the practice of coziness in that part of
right.
the world where you're freezing most of the time. Being
Yeah,
cozy would be kind
yeah,
of a big
very
deal.
important.
Yeah.
Very
So
important.
so part of that of hygge is the fabrics around you, the fireplace, the candles, and that kind of thing. So
Right,
I see that maybe it's part of being a human that we sort of
right.
almost have an innate need for that. So
Yeah,
so so I think you answered the question of who uses it, because it sounds like it's all over the world. Um,
yes.
and then and then why would someone choose feng shui? If they're hearing about it for the first time, it might seem almost like a daunting task to figure out, how you use it, but also why.
I don't think it's really a daunting task. It can be made as complex as you want it to be, but it really comes down to being as comfortable and as secure as you can in an environment, whether it's your home or your office. It really doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And the more secure and comfortable you are, everything else just becomes easier. You become more productive. You actually are healthier. Uh, there are a lot of statistics out there, a lot of research and studies that base that you actually just become healthier mentally and physically.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of good reasons why you want to consider these techniques. And again, it doesn't have to be terribly, terribly complex, but a person can learn this stuff within a few days very well. One of the things that I always tell my students is you need to practice. And, some people don't want, they want it the easy way, but you need to practice it. For example, with respect to the five elements of how to manipulate them, you have to practice it.
Mhm.
But I think anybody can really get an awful lot out of being involved with these techniques.
Mhm. Tell me how you practice using the five elements in a home in the United States.
When I walked into a home and I'm doing an evaluation, the first thing I am actually expecting to see two of the elements more than the others. Those five elements are wood, water, earth, fire, and metal. I expect in almost every home that I walk into to see a lot of earth and a lot of wood. Let's start with wood. There's a lot of wood floors. There are a lot of furniture that is made of wood. And there's a lot of representation of the wood element too, with respect to columns represent wood, and of course, plants. So I do expect to see that, and in some cases that's good. In some cases, it's over the top, and it's an extreme. Now, with the earth, as you definitely will understand, there's a lot of beige homes.
Mhm.
A lot of homes, a lot of the builders, that's automatically the go-to color. So I
Mhm.
almost outlaw it in my school. And so builder beige, as we normally call it, is sort of a norm. And
Mhm.
some people never change. They're quite often the first uh, rugs that they buy are also of the same color.
Mhm.
They become very, very over the top with respect to that kind of thing. But earth can be brought in by the colors of beige, brown, and yellow.
Mhm.
And again, I see an awful lot of it, and sometimes it's to the detriment of the house.
Yeah.
So I expect to see those two elements.
Yeah.
In some cases, they're just fine, but the other three quite often are lacking.
And what are the other three? How would I implement, what did you say, fire, water, and
Okay, sure. Water can be brought in by the colors blue and black,
okay.
and it also can be brought in by the shape of a curvy kind of shape to it.
Oh.
Okay, so you can bring every element into it with a color, with a shape, and with an object too.
Okay.
Certainly, you can bring in, small little water fountains and stuff like that. So that'll bring in water. But with respect to metal, metal has a lot of different colors, as you might expect. But the ones that I use quite a bit are grays and whites, but certainly silver and gold and brass and bronze are all possible colors. It's brought in by the shape of a sphere or a circle. And of course, you see metal in a lot of different cases in an environment, whether the lamp might be made of metal or the picture frame might be metal. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of ways to see it also.
Hmm.
And the other one is fire.
Fire.
Fire
Okay.
is sometimes people sort of shy away from, but the colors are red and what I consider brighter orange.
Hmm.
And the object of fire is a pyramid or a triangle. And you
Hmm.
can see those things into like a floor rug, or a painting. When I first got into feng shui, I was really not into, you might say, modern art.
Yeah.
But modern art became sort of a go-to in a lot of ways to bring the elements in because a lot of modern art has all the elements in it.
Mm.
You have the wavy shapes, or you have the particularly strong colors, or
Yeah.
whatever. So artwork can really help you a great deal with fire. Now, of course, you can bring fire with in other ways. Outside.
How about an actual fireplace?
Sure. The
Yeah.
fireplace does represent that. And in the kitchen, of course, the stove and the microwave also represent that too.
Interesting.
Kitchens quite often, Vic, are really sort of imbalanced to start with. You see a lot of earth in there with the tile floors or with the countertops,
Mhm.
and of course the cabinets are made of wood, and depending on the color of it, it could be also bringing in metal too, if it's white. So
Mhm.
lots of ways to do it, but the kitchen quite often is in balance.
Wow. Wow. That is fascinating to me. So since you brought up homes, could you give me a general idea of a very common home all over the United States is the rancher or the rambler. Um, Tell me about that property. How if I'm a home buyer and I'm walking up to a house and it's a rambler, what am I looking for regarding feng shui?
Well, in the first place, it's a perfect shape for feng shui. Feng shui really likes squares and rectangles,
Oh.
and believe it or not, even circles, although you don't see too many igloos running around, I guess. But they like that type of shape. So that's always a very positive because it's really easy to actually fill the energy in very well. But one of the things that I find out that really helps is what I would call softening the house. Ranches have a lot of sharp corners to them.
Mhm.
And so you sometimes see people that are actually take a flower bed and maybe wrap it around a corner of the front of the house. That softens it, makes it more welcoming. But you see an awful lot of sharpness. And so even with modern homes, often what I want to do is to soften them to start with, and
Mhm.
therefore making it a lot more welcoming for you to come home, but of course anybody that's a visitor too.
Mhm. Mhm. So the exterior of the home, as I'm coming up to it, um, what about the exterior? What else matters? Like, for example, the door. They talk about curb appeal a lot in real estate. Does the door have any important factor to it?
Right, the door is extremely important. It's got a special name called the mouth of chi.
Mm.
Believe it or not, a lot of different parts of the house are sort of symbolically compared to other body parts, like the windows are the eyes,
Wow.
and the hallways are the veins, and all that kind of thing. But yeah, the door is extremely pivotal. It's the primary way for most of the chi or energy to get into a house, and it needs to be set up so it's really attracting that kind of attention, not only for the chi,
Mhm.
but also for people too. So the color of the door is very, very pivotal. And if we're talking primarily about ranches at the moment, a lot of ranches are brick. And so
Mhm.
therefore they're, more of an orangey or reddish kind of color to them,
Mhm.
or maybe more brown. And so therefore the door really should not be any of those colors at all. The door needs to really pop a lot more.
Mhm.
So, I really want to make sure that the door is more of maybe a blue or a yellow or maybe even a black.
Mm.
But and I love green. I'm one of the biggest proponents of the color green you're probably going to ever see. But I love those different colors. But again, it has to be totally different than the exterior. so that it really stands out.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so interesting to me. And so I could be mixing up practices, but does feng shui involve bringing nature in? Is that also a component of feng shui?
Oh, it's extremely pivotal.
Mhm.
Really, the two go hand in hand. And when you see a really sterile environment, whether it's at a home or in an office, quite often it's because it's lacking any kind of plants and stuff like that. So when I'm working on an office, I certainly want to bring in plants in a particular way. I mean, I don't want them to clog up things. You're always trying to make sure that an environment stays safe. You don't want people tripping over things, but you want to be able to put them so they really energize a place and bring in life.
Mhm.
So they represent life. And it's really a great way of actually even making the environment healthier,
Yeah.
because a lot of plants that I advocate really help with respect to toxins and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So we get into that now in feng shui like crazy. Uh, just to maybe get off a little bit off that subject, but we even look at EMF. We have meters that we walk around and check and see if there are hot walls or whatever. You want to make sure that your bed and your master, for example, is up against a wall that is not what I would call hot.
What
And
is EMF? Explain what that is.
electrical magnetic fields,
Oh, okay.
and in older homes, especially with the older wiring, it'll come across. And
Wow.
certain appliances, older appliances, have some EMF too. And when you're involved with that for a long period of time, like an 8-hour sleep, it really can affect your health. So we
Interesting.
stay away from that. So you want to stay away from hot walls. And so that's just another reason why feng shui has really developed even more so.
Wow. I definitely have to have you come back for part two. This is such an interesting topic, and it has so many it sounds like practical applications just for making your home a prettier environment.
It really is a lot of common sense, Vic. It really is. And I think if it wasn't, I probably would never have bought into it like I did, where I sold my portion of a real estate company to just do this full time. If it
Wow.
didn't have a lot of common sense to it.
Yeah, and so you are committed to feng shui. Steve Kodad is a certified feng shui professional, owner of the Feng Shui Cure, and author of 3 books on the subject of feng shui. Steve, it is such a pleasure to have you on Listen Up Homebuyers. Really enjoyed today's conversation.
Thank you, Vic. I enjoyed it too immensely. Thank you.